It was a few years ago that I was sitting in a setting not dissimilar to this, and I was standing in front of a sales meeting with a major record company in Nashville. And I had started a record company called Floodgate Records to help a friend of mine release a worship album, and it went pretty good for a few years. We were selling a lot of records, and all of a sudden MP3s and Napster hit, and I didn't know what I was doing, and the bottom was falling out. And we were in a situation where if we didn't get some help, we were dead in the water. But you know, God answered my prayer, and I'm sitting in front of this sales meeting, and the CEO of the company is there, and we're ready to announce that this major record company was merging with my company and absorbing my record label. And it was just this great time where hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt was going to be written off, and they were going to give me a six-figure salary to stay on and run the company and be a West Coast arm of their company. And so we got in front of this sales meeting, and we're talking to the sales reps, and there was media there. There was a head of iTunes was there, and we're telling them about this deal, and I'm just saying, you know, I know you guys have maybe been disappointed with my record label, Floodgate, in the past for our lack of resources and our lack of staff, but we've got it all together now with this merger. We're going to have all the resources we need. We're going to have the staff we need. Finally, we're going to be able to push these artists the way we want. And went from that meeting to an intimate meeting with the CEO and the president of the label, and we're talking through logistics, and you know, it's just smiles and high fives, and they're telling me how much they believe in me and how excited they are for this deal. And I flew from Nashville to Florida to a music festival to tell a lot of my up-and-coming, you know, young bands about this major merger and how all these new assets and resources are really going to break their career. And, you know, talking to my wife, and we're just like, thank God this came together, and this is such an answer to prayer. And flew home on a Sunday, and then Monday morning, opened my laptop and get my email, and there's a 2-sentence email from the CEO that says, we made a mistake. We can't find the money to do the deal. The deal's off. Sorry. And I'm like, what? Sorry? This can't be, you know? How can you work on a deal for 6 months and not know that you don't have the money to do the deal, you know? How can you sit in a room with me 3 days ago and say how excited you are and send me a 2-sentence email to say the deal's off? This can't be. And I was upset and frustrated and didn't know what was going on. And it was just a pivotal time in my life. And today, I'm here to talk to you guys about failure. And if we would have said, hey, the title of this talk is failure, I think a lot of you guys would have opted to stay home. But somehow, Biola, it's probably Larry Strand, they're so good at business that they conned you guys to coming out on a Monday night, and some of you actually paid $5 to come hear this talk about a speaker who's not very good talk about failure. So we got to give it up for Biola for being pretty good at business. Well played, Larry Strand. You know, you can Google about business and failure, and you'll see a lot of interesting stories. You know, Michael Jordan getting cut from his high school basketball team and crying because they didn't think he was good enough. And then you hear about Steve Jobs founding Apple. You know, it's coming up, and he gets fired from his own company only to get rehired, you know. And even Katy Perry, that just came out with a new record, she got dropped from several record labels until Capitol picked her up. You know, actually Katy was a Christian recording artist before she went mainstream. And I don't know if many people know this story, but she was dating a kid from the band Relient K. They were signed to Capitol. And Katy actually got banned from the Capitol Records building because she was so wild and crazy and they couldn't control her. And then fast forward, 5 years later, she's probably the hottest act on the label. So it's kind of funny what happens. But it seems like the consistency is a lot of people don't get very far in their careers and in life without experiencing some kind of failure. And that failure really comes from risk. One more story. I got to know a guy named Francis Chan. You guys know Francis Chan? So I went to Uganda with him about 10 years ago, and we remained friends. And I remember him telling this story about, he had this mega church in Simi Valley, but he decided he wanted to plant a church in inner city LA and really minister to inner city LA. So his plan was he was going to go play basketball with these guys every week in, week out, develop relationship, build trust. And he did that for a whole year, just played basketball with these guys. So finally it came time where he was going to launch this inner city church, and he told the guys what he wanted to do, and he had his first meeting on a Sunday. Nobody showed up. So here's this mega church guy, renowned author, sought after speaker, and he can't get anybody to show up to his inner city church meeting. So a lot of people taking risk, and for some reason it's not happening. My dad introduced me today, and a lot of who I am came from my dad, came from my supportive parents, but my dad was a mix of a businessman. When I grew up, he was the president of Coca-Cola Los Angeles and really oversaw the Western US for Coca-Cola. And additionally, he was a jazz drummer, and a lot of people don't know that. And at some point in time, I think around when I was in 6th grade, maybe 5th grade, he brought his drum set out of the attic and set it up and said, "Who wants to play drums?" And I was the one kid of the three of us that kind of stuck with it and liked playing drums. I have to say that my parents were probably some of the most supportive parents in the world. And I guess I have only one experience to go off of, but it started out with sports. You got through soccer games, you got the baseball games. But where it really kicked in is in high school. I was playing in bands. So when I was like 16 or 15, I was playing in clubs in Hollywood. I was playing in clubs in Orange County. And we'd be on the Sunset Strip at the Whiskey A Go-Go on a Thursday night at 10 o'clock. And there's my parents in the audience, always supporting me, always rooting me on and cheering me on. Never, do you think this is a good idea, or any sort of discouragement. It was always rooting for me. So my dilemma was, I had this band that was pseudo-successful locally, graduated high school, what am I going to do? So I kind of floated around college a little bit, ended up at Fullerton College, Orange Coast College, and because I wasn't serious about college, my dad said, you should probably work, since you're not serious about college. So my first job was washing dishes at a psychiatric hospital, and that was pretty interesting. It was actually quite a bit of fun. And my second job was unloading trucks at Smart & Final. My dad helped me get the job at 3 in the morning. And I remember one time coming home from a U2 concert and getting home about 1 a.m. and having to be at work at 3 a.m. and thinking, this whole unloading trucks in the middle of the night thing isn't very fun. So then I got serious about school and finally enrolled at Cal State Fullerton. And towards the end of my schooling, my band got a record deal. And so, I toured the summer before my final year of college, and down to the last semester, I remember flying to Russia and playing at the Olympic Arena in St. Petersburg, and flying back to school and wondering, do I really need to finish school? And I was so close, but I finally finished school and made my parents proud. Probably another one of my great failures is the band. We played for 5 years, made some records, got to play all over the US and Europe, maybe 45 states. Very fun job if you ever want to look into being a singer of a rock band. It's a pretty good job. It doesn't pay that much, but it's a pretty good job. I guess if you're Katy Perry, it pays pretty good. But towards the end, the band blew up. And not in a good way. We didn't blow up, we blew up. In fact, one day we were on a tour bus and actually did blow up, and it melted to the ground, but we got out. But we just started hating each other. 5 years on the road, being gone 150 days a year, 8 hours a day in a van. We only got into a bus once, I think. That was the one that burnt down, so we never tried that again. But we were in a van. And honestly, I think some of why we broke up was me. I think I felt self-righteous, and some of the guys had different views and different conduct that I thought was what a Christian band should be about, and I broke up the band. And looking back on it, I'm not sure that was God's will, It wasn't really looking at my brothers in love and accepting them. It was more about, me thinking that this is what a Christian looks like. So that was probably big failure number one for me. After the band, actually during the band, I met my smoking hot wife, Tracy Tabor, right there. You want to stand up? No. We dated kind of long distance while I was touring, and I fell in love and then convinced her to fall in love, and soon after that we got married. And so the band ended, and I came back to Orange County. I grew up here, and I grew up going to all these concerts at these churches, There was these bands like the Altar Boys and Undercover and all these bands that we would go every week, and there was no internet, so you would get a flyer at one show and you wouldn't find out when the next show was, and we did this all the time. And I got back after touring for 5 years, and there was nothing happening. The scene was totally dead. So I decided to take some of the knowledge that I had from being in music and throw concerts for kids to give them an option from going to parties, So we were throwing indie rock and punk rock and hard rock shows for a couple hundred kids at youth group rooms. And that was kind of the birth of Transparent Productions, which is this company. Oh wait, I forgot. I got a cool band photo. Yeah. Let's see. There's me. That's my rock band days. Back when I was young. Okay, what else?
They can look it up.
Yeah, you can Google it. Okay, so we started Transparent Productions, and basically, if you don't know what a concert promotion company is, it sounds like it's marketing, but it's much more than that. What happens is there's an agent that represents the artist, and they call us, or I'm calling them all the time, we're emailing back and forth, and they say, hey, this artist wants to come to the West Coast, do you want to do any concerts? And I'd say, yeah, maybe we want to do Denver and Albuquerque and Tucson and Orange County and LA and San Francisco. So then I go out and find a venue, a place for the concert to happen, and I kind of create a budget which turns into an offer sheet. So we're going to spend this much on the venue, we're going to spend this much on marketing, this much on catering, staffing, the crew to load in and out the gear, all that type of stuff. And then from that I formulate what ticket prices are going to be, and I kind of come up with where I'm comfortable of the event breaking even, and then I can figure out how much I'm willing to pay the artist. Because the agent will always say, we want this much money, and I'll come back and I say, we can pay him this much, and then sometimes we meet in the middle. So if the agent says yes to the event, then we prepare a plan to get it on sale and get it marketed. So we use radio, we use Facebook, we use old school methods like telemarketing and flyering and posters and anything we can to get the word out. And we put the event in our ticketing service that we use, which is Ticketfly. Some of the events are reserved seating, some of them are general admission. We do a lot of pre-sales where certain fans or people that follow us can get in early and get the good seats or whatever. And then we usually have like a 3-month gap in the show plays. We handle all the day of show logistics. So from when the band gets there in the morning and loads in, we have crews unloading trucks, setting up sound, lighting. We're doing catering, we're feeding them. We're doing all the staffing. We're doing ticket taking, ushers, selling the band's t-shirt, everything. And then hopefully we've sold enough tickets to pay all the bills. And once we pay all the bills, we get to make some money, but we don't get to make all the money because then the band still makes a percentage of all the profit after that. So don't get into the concert business. There's really no money in it. So, fast forward, it's been 18 years maybe that we've been doing this. So we've been married 19 years, something like that, 18 years. we went from doing indie rock and punk rock and hard rock to doing Chris Tomlin and Hillsong United and all these groups. And actually this year's been a really fun year for us. We were able to sell out Chris Tomlin at Verizon Wireless Amphitheater, which was pretty cool. And we got to do a show at the Hollywood Bowl for the first time with Hillsong United. And our Fish Fest sold out for, I think, the 4th time, which Fish Fest is a one-day music festival that we created for the radio station called The Fish. When they came to town, we proposed to them that we would produce this event and they would be the title sponsor. And so I think we're in our 13th year now. That's Fish Fest. But that's kind of talking about the good times, but you know, along the way there's still a lot more failures that had to happen. So a few years ago, Jared's in the back room. Jared Gibo, wave. No, that's his brother. Jared was actually student body president here a few years back, but before that he was, what was it called, concert coordinator or something? Yeah. So I met Jared when he was a student here, and we were doing concerts together on campus. And one time we brought a indie rock band called May into the gym. They sold 2,600 tickets, and we were like, this is awesome. So I had this great idea that we would throw an indie rock music festival. So we did it in the parking lot of the Verizon Wireless Amphitheater. I had a relationship with Live Nation, who controls the venue. We built these stages in the parking lot, kind of like Warped Tour. I don't know if you know what that is, but these trailer stages. We had vendors, we had In and Out come out, we had all the cool bands. It was early days of One Republic played the show, and everything was in place and it was all awesome, except that nobody bought tickets. And we lost $68,000 that day. On and with another chain of failures is, one time my friends who are really into motorcycles thought, oh, Tim knows how to do Christian concerts. I'm sure it's a lot like motorcycle racing. So we decided to do the AMA Superbike Championship race out at Willow Springs. And that's the kind of motorcycles where they lay down on their knees in the turns and do all this cool stuff. And I got K-Rock involved in a big way. Their morning guy, Lightning producer, was really into motorcycles, so they were on board. We got Coca-Cola on board somehow. No, but we did a trade. We were in every AM/PM mini market in Southern California. Kawasaki was on board. We gave away a couple motorcycles, and we were just like, this is going to be awesome. And we lost $150,000 that day. Also, Fish Fest, our great accomplishment now that sold out in 2013. Probably 6 years ago, we weren't making any progress in selling tickets. The venue holds 15,000 people, and we were only selling like 9,000 tickets. And so it was profitable, but it wasn't really profitable. And I had this great idea that, you know what? People just like Fish Fest for Fish Fest, and it really doesn't matter what bands we book because they're just coming to Fish Fest for the experience. So I can just book like one expensive band and then a lot of other non-expensive bands, and we'll make a lot more money. But you know what happens when you do that? Nobody buys tickets. So we went from selling, 9,000 tickets to selling 7,000 tickets, and we're like, what the heck? And then we had the idea of, hey, wait, we have 7,000 empty seats. Why don't we just sell those tickets for $9.59, which ties into the frequency of the Fish, and see if we can fill this place up. And the first year we moved to that model, we sold out. And so now every year we're kind of ratcheting up the prices slightly. There was 7,000 or 8,000 $10 tickets. Next year there's going to be 5,000 $10 tickets. And that was the model that finally got people to experience the event and check it out. But for a while there, I wasn't sure if that event was going to make it. Another part of who I am, and probably a really big part of who I am, and I think if you guys are business people, you got to balance life. I mean, everybody at church is like, oh, your work is ministry, and you get that, and my dad preaches that all the time, and workplace ministry. But although my business is directly related to people experiencing God and to expanding the kingdom, it's business for me. So I feel like I need a different ministry outlet. And probably about 10 years ago, I was actually reading an article in the LA Times that talked about Africa. And I talked to Tracy and I said, I think maybe God's calling me to go to Africa. And she's kind of like, oh, okay, that's nice, whatever. And shortly after I saw our pastor, we go to Rock Harbor at Chipotle, and I told him about it. And he's like, that's so weird, I'm going to Africa. So a few months later, we're in Uganda, and we're doing ministry. We're doing a pastor's conference. We're doing university outreaches. Francis is there. We're speaking, and we're doing worship and stuff. And one day we got to fly up and see an IDP camp, which stands for Internally Displaced People. And Uganda was in the middle of a 20-year rebel war at the time. And what we saw there just wrecked us. I mean, everybody was crying. I mean, there's people living in 10 by 10 mud structures with like 10 people in the structure, and literally all they have is like a pot, maybe a blanket. The UN's delivering some food. The husbands of the house, the fathers of the house are trying to find $1 a day to try to provide for their family, and it just looks hopeless. And I was really moved that our church said get involved somehow. And they agreed. And Tracy and I have led the Uganda ministry for the past 8 years or so. We were able to plant a church in Gulu, Uganda, northern Uganda, about 4 hours south of the Sudanese border 8 years ago. And that church has planted 4 other churches. And we get the privilege of leading teams over there and just partnering with them. And we've started a child sponsorship program over there for about 300 kids. And so to us, that's a huge highlight of our family and who we are. So the interesting thing about failure is it never gets easier. But I have the feeling that, and Jared was talking about, he's loving this passage in Deuteronomy recently that talks about God, leading the Israelites out into the desert and kind of having them wait to take them to the promised land so they kind of wouldn't think it was their own doing. They would know it's God. And I think that when you try in life and you're doing things in business and you're taking risk, sometimes you're experiencing these failures to keep you humble. And therefore, when the successes come, it's not like, look at the great things I did. It's God. Because I know that I'm not clever enough and smart enough and cool enough to sell 15,000 tickets for Hillsong United at the Hollywood Bowl. I know that God opened doors and built relationships and gave me favor and brought me into meetings that I probably shouldn't get. I think I learned a long time ago that it's really God doing these things. And I still slip, and Jared's like, yeah, bro, sometimes you forget that. And it's cool to have a guy on your team that can call you out, and help you give credit where credit's due. The other thing is, I was at church, I guess yesterday, and we're talking about Ephesians 2:8 and 9. For by grace you have been saved through faith, not yourself. It's a gift of God, not as a result of works. And of course that applies to our salvation, that Christ came down to die for us. It's by His grace that we're saved. But I'm focusing on this talk today, and I'm thinking it's the same with business. Our accomplishments are a gift from God. It's not just about how hard we work. Working hard is a great attribute. It's a great thing. We want to do it. We want to use the gifts and talents that God has given us for His kingdom in anything we do. It doesn't matter what you do. We're going to do everything we do with excellence. But the flip side of it is anything that comes out of it is from God. It's a gift from God. And it's interesting talking to business students and MBA students, because there's probably a lot of people here that want to realize their dreams. They want to step out, you want to risk, you want to see what God has in store for you. And, you know, sometimes maybe you're in a job for a long time and you feel trapped. Maybe you're here in the MBA program because you want to go to the next level, you want to do something more in your business career or more with your life. And I really feel like we have a God who loves us. We have a God who's full of grace, full of mercy. He wants what's best for you. He doesn't want us to be stuck in fear in a job that maybe we don't like, but we've been doing it for 15 years and now we can't get out of it. You know, and if you're new to the workplace and you're maybe undergrad or whatever, I believe that God completely wants to use you. I think he wants to use Christians to change the world, you know? So anybody have questions? I think we had some more slides. There's Fish Fest. I should probably tell you what these are, huh? This is Hillsong United. I think this is Hillsong United too. Fish Fest. Hillsong. Mercy Me. Fish Fest. I think that's it. Oh, there's me with Hillsong United and custom skateboards. That's it. Okay, cool. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
How big is your staff, your overall organization, supporting all these events?
We only have 4 people on staff. Myself, Jared, operations guy, marketing girl, and that's it. And then at the events, I didn't talk about it much, but we've developed a relationship with most of the bigger non-Christian promoters around the world. So, you know, we can go in and do an arena show in Chicago and not have to do much of the staffing. You know, we'll set it up, we'll do the marketing, we'll do a lot of the logistics, and then partner with somebody that can handle the day of show logistics. So it doesn't take a huge staff. We usually actually staff up with some temps around Fish Fest time to handle some of that extra workload. Because in addition to Fish Fest, while the bands are out here, we'll typically try to route other dates for them. So they might be in Tucson or Las Vegas or Phoenix or San Diego. So we get spread pretty thin at that time. So we try to bring in some extra staff. But usually just our skeleton crew can handle it. But we always have interns. We get a lot of good interns from Biola. We have a couple right now, right? Are they both of them from Biola? You want me to stop talking to you, don't you? But yeah, we've got a design intern right now and another guy that's doing a lot of ticketing kind of info for us. So we're able to operate on a pretty skeleton crew. Anybody else?
So what are your most effective channels of marketing that you've noticed, and then also how have you seen them change over the past decade?
Yeah, Facebook's been huge for us over the past like 3-4 years because it really gave us the ability to niche focus to direct to consumer. So, you know, we can pull up search criteria and people that, you know, if we're having Chris Tomlin come in concert, we can target people that like Chris Tomlin or Passion or David Crowder or, you know, Jesus Culture Worship or whatever, and really focus on that consumer. But the thing with that kind of technology is it feels like it's constantly changing. Instagram is just adding a platform for marketing that we're going to try out. We've tried some Google ads, and obviously that's changed in just the last several years. Radio still is big and was really big, but it kind of restricted our ability to work with different types of artists, because if they weren't getting played on the radio, you know, it was hard for us to get a hold of people. We still do, like I said, old school stuff. So like we just did a Veggie Tales live event in San Diego. San Diego does not have good Christian radio. So a lot of it was telemarketing to church children's pastors and letting them know about the event and seeing if they wanted actual flyers and posters and just like, you know, grassroots type stuff. So we also have a great email list of about 20,000 people that's really clean, and it's all ticket buyers. And we have a Facebook community of about 5,500 people. So that's primarily what we do. If it's a core artist that's played on the radio, then we throw a lot of money at radio. So like for Chris Tomlin at Verizon, the Fish got a nice paycheck for helping to promote that.
So at this point, are you still reaching out to agents, or are they calling you now to help book venues?
It's a two-way street, you know. I have to be diligent in reaching out to them just to remind them, hey, we're out here, you know. But fortunately, over the past decade, we have become kind of the premier Christian concert promoter on the West Coast. But it doesn't mean there's not competition. Even sometimes the mainstream guys will buy Christian talent, you know, and take away from our business. Live Nation and AEG, which are the two biggest concert promoters in the world, still like the relationship of working with us, which is great. So, you know, we keep partnering with them, and they trust us because we've demonstrated the ability to care about their money as well as our money and not lose money, you know, very often when we're in those partnerships. And so we've kind of demonstrated a knowledge of the market, how to reach the consumer, and we've gotten results. But there's still some competition out there, unfortunately.
Are you the business development manager, or you need one?
Yeah, I've kind of moved into some bigger picture stuff. So if we're going to develop new festivals, that would be me. I've actually been working on an idea for a couple years that is on the verge of falling apart and would really bum me out. But you know, it's the bigger events that cover most of our overhead. So it's, you know, if we do 60 events a year, 6 of them probably paid 80% of the bills, and the rest of them paid 20%. So if I can focus on those bigger events, it could grow the company quicker. So, and Jared's moved from marketing to what we call talent buying, which is you know, actually doing the deals with the artists. So we work closely together, but it also frees me up to do some of the bigger picture stuff. Anyone else? Oh.
How long have you wanted to be a concert promoter, and have you ever desired to do something different?
Yeah, I think that it was just going with what you know. So by spending 5 years on the road and probably playing 500 concerts, I really got to see like what people did right and what they did wrong, and what I liked as an artist and what I didn't like, and you know, take those skills. And it was easy to start something because I had basically had an education in that business by touring for a few years. As far as doing something different, yeah, I mean, we don't love every artist that we work with, but you end up working with people because you need to do business to generate revenue, to pay your employees. So it's not always the best job in the world. It really is a bummer to lose a lot of money on a band that you really don't like. like when you book a show with a band that you just like love their creativity or you love their heart, and it doesn't go well and you lose on it, you're like, you know what, that's cool because that was so great tonight, and you know, the musicianship was just amazing, and or the ministry was just so amazing. It's a real bummer when you lose money and you're like, I don't even like that band, you know? But, you know, we don't always pick and choose who we work with. We kind of go after everything to pay the bills. But yeah, I guess I'm happy being a concert promoter. I also manage a producer, a guy named Jeremy Edwardson, who's produced all the Jesus Culture worship records, and he's currently doing the new Carrie Job album and does a lot of different things. Yes.
Tell us how, with all the failures that you've had, you've continued to go on. You know, how did you get past that, those thousands of dollars of loss, and continue on and have the, you know, desire to keep going?
Good question. I think that all of that's a learning experience, right? I mean, you find out wow, I was really way too aggressive in how much money I was willing to pay these artists, or my expectations on what ticket sales were way too aggressive. And you use that information to go on and get better at your job. The other thing was like, even that festival that was called Uprising, that was like the indie rock fest that lost $68,000. I kind of think like if I would have had deep pockets like Live Nation or AEG or some of these big promoters, you know, that thing might have come around in 3 years. In talking to some of my friends at these other companies, and you know, fortunately we get meetings with some of these really top guys over there. They're like, yeah, like we'll start an event and lose $4 million the first year, you know, because we know that in 5 years, you know, we might make $4 million, and then we're kind of off to the races, and in 20 years, then we're making real money in their mind, in their books. So, and it's kind of encouraging and inspiring to talk to some of these guys, presidents of large companies, and to see how they risk. And it's all like very, you know, leveraged risk. We're supposed to know what we're doing. We're supposed to know the market, and sometimes you bet wrong. But in general, they're going into things. But you know, everybody that wants to try something new and try something big, there's risk, and sometimes it doesn't work. But I think if you pick yourself up and, you know, learn from it, it's just going to make you better at what you do and stronger. Hi.
So since you're on the inside, just curious what your thoughts are on overall Christian music, and are there more artists coming out, less, particularly in the United States? You know, the Fish is kind of a big deal in LA. We take it for granted maybe. You mentioned San Diego doesn't even have a Christian station to advertise on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a telltale of active Christian.
We're kind of seeing the decline of Christian music, actually. I think that you've got worship music, which is actually on the uprise, because I think if people are faced with a choice of being entertained or encountering God, they're going to choose encountering God. And I think that there's CCM artists that have awesome hearts and ministry, and there's worship parts of what they do, like Third Day or Mercy Me or Casting Crowns. But there's something different about a Hillsong United event where people arrive expectant to meet Jesus. They arrive expecting for God to do something amazing, you know, and there's just something different there. And so we've really seen the inability of CCM record companies to break the next Casting Crowns or the next Third Day. You know, it seems like the guys that are on top have been there a long time, a decade or more. So, you know, we're rooting for 10th Avenue North or some of these up-and-coming bands to take that place to sell 5,000 tickets. But there's kind of been a hole in the industry for the last several years. And it's very, very noticeable when I go to book Fish Fest, because I don't want to repeat artists 2 years in a row. And I usually book 2 kind of A-level headliners, and we're kind of down to like 6 or 7. Like, there's just not a lot of A-level headliners. And even when I go in to fill in the other slots, you know, okay, well, who's like a second-tier artist? Well, there's not even a lot of those, you know? So there's a lot of developing, like they have one hit on the radio kind of bands, but those aren't the bands that usually sell tickets, you know? It's like you might think like, oh gosh, I love that song, but are you willing to pay $20 to go see them play, you know? Probably not until you like 3 or 4 or 5 of their songs. Is that the first record, or is it by the 3rd record they have that many singles? So I see a glut there, but the flip side is worship. You know, you see Hillsong basically, when we did Hillsong United at the Hollywood Bowl, they kind of set the record for the biggest Christian concert west of the Mississippi or something. So something's happening there. Something's happening with people really wanting to encounter God and getting tied in with a movement. So you see a lot of excitement about Jesus culture, a lot of excitement about Hillsong, and a lot of excitement about Passion. Passion's kind of been around longer, and they're very niche focused on the college market, but you know, Chris Tomlin is a legitimate worship leader. Now Matt Redman's part of that movement. You got David Crowder. So those are kind of the three, I think, up-and-coming movements. And then you see other big churches like Gateway Church in Dallas and different churches putting out worship music that people are really getting inspired by and getting into. But CCM music as entertainment might be in trouble. Anyone else? Cool. Well, like I said, we're going to hang out, and I'd love to meet you. And seriously, like, we're not just a Christian company because we make money. Like, we actually believe in Jesus. We actually believe that He's alive and He does great things. And so if you need prayer tonight or just want to hang out or whatever, we'll be around. So thank you.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.